Once I took my first class in sociology and decided that I wanted to become a sociologist because it seemed so natural and answered so many questions that I had, and in fact answered questions that I didn't even know I had. I decided to major in sociology. I was a psychology major, so I added sociology, finished out the degree, and realized that I wanted to have some autonomy in my work, and was really very interested in sociological research. And so from talking to my professors, I realized that I needed to pursue a PhD. So right away, I started looking at graduate programs and decided to get a PhD in sociology. As an undergraduate, I was very fortunate in that I took a class in which we did SPSS, which is software that we use to analyze sociological research. And I also was able to help professors in some of their research. I remember doing my first survey, crowd survey in New York City. And so I went to graduate school with that little bit of a background. But I was able to build on that in graduate school by getting jobs as a research assistant in which I used my knowledge with SPSS, and that has really kept me in great stead. We say that sociology is a flexible major for a flexible work life, and I'll tell you that as I talk about the jobs that I've had, you'll hear flexibility. In graduate school, I worked with a professor who did gang research, and I did analysis of that kind of data. I worked with a professor who was doing an evaluation of a task force in which they did service learning projects, and we were evaluating that. So I learned a little bit about doing evaluation. And then while I was still in graduate school, but writing my dissertation, I moved to Texas, and there I worked for the Texas Department of Health, looking at infant mortality. And then I did another job in which I looked at health professions and scarcity of health professions, all of this using my research skills. After that, I moved to the State Bar of Texas, where I looked at demographic data of attorneys in the state of Texas and prepared reports. I moved to the University of Texas at Austin, where I evaluated welfare reform projects. I've worked at the University of South Florida, where I did a variety of things, including being an evaluator of a maternal and child health project, another study in which we looked at the impact of psychotropic medication on children in child welfare. So there's a great big variety of things that I've been able to do with my sociological background. I often say I can count anything. I can conduct research, do evaluation on just about anything because I have this great background. I can learn the details, but the research skills that I have can be used in a number of ways. I've also done consultation work for Moffitt Cancer Hospital, where I've done focus groups for them, where they're testing materials to help educate women on genetic testing. So I've done questions for them, focus groups, and interviews. So really, a lot of things have led me to now being a professor where I'm in the classroom, but I have a wide experience of doing all kinds of research. Although I've done all kinds of sociological research, the area that has tended to fascinate me most is to do with race. Sociology of race, but also sociology of race, class, and gender, and how those things intersect. So my own dissertation research, for example, looked at the racial and ethnic construction of people from the Caribbean who are of African descent, how they see themselves in terms of race and ethnicity once they reside in the United States. So, for example, one of the questions that's interesting to me is race constructed the same all around the world? And I use the word constructed deliberately because we tend to think of race as biology, right? It is, but as we learn a little more about race, we learn that race is thought of and acted upon differently in different areas of the world, at different time periods in the same place, differently, and I find that endlessly fascinating. Sociology is rewarding to me for several reasons. I am naturally curious, and so it's rewarding in that way. It answers many of my why questions. And it's rewarding because ultimately, with a lot of that knowledge, we can attempt to make changes in places where we want to make changes. We can use information that we gain as sociologists to improve conditions for people in all kinds of areas, depending on what the work is. So that's what I find particularly rewarding. The future is really bright for sociology and sociologists. I think as funds become tighter and tighter in many industries, each dollar that we receive in many areas is tied to a question of, are these funds doing what you promised me they would? And as I said earlier, my own background has been a lot to do with evaluation, and that's using sociological skills and know-how. And it doesn't matter what area that's in, whether it's funding for sports, funding for domestic violence, funding for child care issues. Oftentimes, with that, the funder is going to say, could you do some evaluation of this as well? So in that way, sociology becomes, I think, even more important to have the ability to do that. But we find more and more industries are interested in the skills that sociologists have, our ability to think critically about a variety of issues, our ability to write well, ability to analyze data, to look at data and look at trends, to create graphs that describe them, to read data. Those are all skills that are used in a variety of careers that have become more and more important. And those are all skills that we work very heavily with in sociology.